my next guest, predicts a crypto renaissance in 2025 with more people realizing its potential, he says, to save them money. Joining me now is Lucas Matheson. He's Chief Executive Officer of Coinbase Canada. Lucas, thanks a lot for joining us. How can owning cryptocurrency actually save people money?
Yeah, great to have me on, Paul. Thank you. I think, we're at a pretty significant inflection point in the world right now following the 2024 U.S. election. And a lot of folks are expecting quite sensible regulation and policy to come into effect. And that's something that Coinbase and our crypto industry has been advocating for the last decade, is clear rules for innovators to adopt digital assets. And we're seeing governments around the world starting to think about preserving their purchasing power through Bitcoin strategic reserves, something retail investors have been doing for over a decade. I think generally, when you think of our M2 money supply in Canada, our government in Canada specifically has added 80% more fiat into our M2 money supply over the last decade alone. And for that reason, our purchasing power, our paychecks are decreasing in value, which is why Canadians are struggling in Canada with inflation. I think Bitcoin and crypto offers a path for economic freedom, and that's certainly the mission of Coinbase, is to increase the economic freedom. That includes Canadians. 15% of Canadians are considered underbanked or unbanked. But more broadly in Canada, we have a very well-educated base of Canadians who are keen to get access to the digital economy. It's our third most crypto-aware country of all the international geos that we operate in. And it's certainly a trend for institutions and asset managers, pension funds. Brenda mentioned on your last guest, she mentioned she's talking to more clients about acquiring Bitcoin, and certainly with institutions diversifying their clients' assets and their own treasuries into Bitcoin and digital assets, we expect increasing momentum into the adoption in 2025.
You see, you really see cryptocurrency going mainstream in Canada in 2025. And one thing you predict is that more municipalities, for instance, I believe Vancouver has led the way here, will begin accepting payments for their services or perhaps for tax bills owing in cryptocurrencies, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I had a chance to chat with Ken Sim from Vancouver. What he's doing, I think, is leading the path and showing other municipalities in Canada what's possible. I think more governments, institutions are starting to think about how to manage their own treasuries and diversify into assets that can preserve purchasing power. And Vancouver's no different. And I trust municipalities, governments all over the world are starting to think about why the world is thinking and talking about a Bitcoin strategic reserve or reserves into digital currencies and assets. And I expect this is just the beginning. And for a lot of people, we're still very early in the adoption of digital assets. And it's exciting to see governments starting to take the initiative to explore how to diversify their own assets to preserve that purchasing power. And ultimately, that's an incredibly important part of our economy and why the world is starting to adopt, specifically in institutions in Canada.
You're not, I assume, depicting cryptocurrencies as a risk-free currency alternative. There, as we very well know, have been big swings in the price of Bitcoin and other cryptos over recent years, and big swings include massive declines at times. How should people who are new to cryptocurrency understand the risk?
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think the mindset for a lot of Canadians is that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is a short-term speculative retail type of asset. And I think what's happening in the world is many institutions and governments are now showing retail investors and the general public that crypto is a long-term asset that people should be thinking about long-term and owning long-term. Volatility is a concept that only really makes sense in the perspective of a time horizon. And when you think of a long time horizon, Bitcoin has been one of the least volatile assets that we've seen relative to even our fiat currency as being, if you think of our fiat as being volatile, decreasing 8% per year. And so I think responsible long-term investing and diversification into crypto, as you said, just a normal part of everyone's portfolio, is becoming mainstream. I think more retail investors and your listeners and governments are starting to think about what is the responsible diversification that we should be making into crypto, because that is certainly the trend. And obviously your audience will appreciate that the benchmarks around the world will change over the next 12 months to include portfolios and benchmarks that include diversification into the digital economy.
Pension funds, a lot of investors certainly take their cues in some cases from what pension funds are doing. How dramatically have we seen pension funds open their portfolios to cryptocurrencies?
I think it's inevitable that pension funds will need to diversify. I don't think it'll be. I think we'll see a lot more interest in the United States post the administration. We expect significant changes to be introduced and teams of individuals that will be advocating for pro-crypto stances. And because of that, we're seeing increasing momentum from institutions and pension funds, asset managers and allocators in the United States that will lead a new direction for investment advisors all over the world. In Canada, we have 80% of wealth that is managed by investment advisors, and very few investment advisors are soliciting advice around digital assets and crypto. And I think that is really the big opportunity for Canadians to find investment advisors that understand this asset class and can help them diversify assets into the crypto economy. And for those people who are looking to self-direct their own investments, Coinbase has been recently registered as a restricted dealer here in Canada. We're the first international exchange to be registered, and we're growing a very significant business helping millions of Canadians diversify their assets directly into the digital economy as well.
The Trump administration is certainly seen as crypto friendly. Are there changes, do you believe, necessary in Canada in terms of the legal and regulatory framework on cryptocurrency?
So in Canada, we have a fairly stringent regulatory regime here, although we're very fortunate to have regulators that have taken a proactive stance over the last 3 years to build a regulatory framework for us to operate under the supervision of our regulators. And so as a regulated financial institution in Canada, we're now in a position where we can support more institutions in Canada. 2025 will be a significant year for Coinbase Canada to introduce our institutional products and services in Canada to help pension funds, banks, traditional financial companies get access to the digital economy in the most safe, compliant way possible. And we're seeing more broader interest around the world, specifically to leverage our Prime APIs and our technology that we built over the last decade to help institutions and governments diversify into crypto.